everyone, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we have my January wrap-up. I feel like my hair and everything is ridiculously crazy today. It was snowing when I took Presley to school, so that was fun. I've lived somewhere with snow before. It's just been like over 10 years, so it was a very interesting experience. So we are here to talk about my January wrap-up, everything that I read in January. We are definitely going to go through the stats first, and then all of the books from my least favorite to my most favorite, and we have a lot to talk about today. Okay, so we are going to talk about all the stats first. I read 17 books in January, which is amazing. So much better than some of my months last year, like awesome, right? However, only 11 of those books were not DNFs. I DNF'd 6 books in January. I DNF'd 10 books the entire year last year, but I DNF'd 6 books in January. I will give you a spoiler. I've already DNF'd 1 book in February. Like I don't know if it's just me being like not taking any shit anymore. Like if I'm not enjoying it at all, I'm getting rid of it. If I don't think it's gonna be more than mediocre, I'm done. Like I don't know if it's the quality of the books or I'm just more cutthroat with it because I don't want to sit around and read mediocre stuff. You know what I mean? Or things that I just don't jive with. So I read a ton of things. I got through a ton of books. I DNF'd 6 of them, which is quite a bit for me. So if we go into like how many pages I read in the month, I did read 3,617 pages, which is actually pretty good. My main base goal for pages is usually like 2,000 a month. I feel like that's a good like baseline for me. If we go into how many hours I listened to 9.9 hours of audiobooks, which I actually think is pretty good, pretty standard for me, especially since like I'm not driving Presley to school all the time. We walk and I talk to the kids or, you know, enjoy being outside. I don't listen to that stuff then. For how I read things this month, 7 of the books were physical, 6 were ebooks, and 4 were audiobooks. I did read from 6 different genres this month. 5 were romance, 4 were fantasy, 4 were sci-fi, 2 were mystery, 1 was a thriller, and 1 was magical realism. For the book format, 2 of them were graphic novels, and the rest, 15 of them, were novels. As for indie or traditional, I made a video recently talking about what indie actually means, like in the book publishing space, because I think even me sometimes would forget how we do stuff with like self-publishing versus indie versus traditional. I'm still going to be counting self-published stuff and actual small indie publishers as indie. I know some people do things their way or don't look at this, which is perfectly fine. I do like to do this. And so I might also have a small gray area depending on like if a book was indie for many years and then recently got picked up by a more traditional publisher, whether they actually like would have edited it or not. But for January, 6 of the books that I read were indie and 11 were traditionally published. This is a slightly higher percentage for indie books than I normally have. It's closer to usually like 25%, 75 versus this like 1/3, 2/3. But I mean, I'm not mad at it. I would like to keep that up. We'll just sort of see how the books I read as we go throughout the year are classified. How I got it. 10 of them were books from my owned TBR, which is great. 4 of them I borrowed from the library, and 3 of them were ARCs. So I mean, like, ultimately that sounds good to me. I would like to keep that up. And then going into the age category, 10 of them were adult reads, 4 were young adult, and 3 were middle grade. One thing that's not exactly new to track this year, but I do think I want to include it now with every single monthly stats, is the publication year, because I have simplified it a bit. So 9 of the books that I read in January are backlist titles, so things that you can still get from publishers and things like that, but they're not like new. 3 of them are from 2025, 2 of them are from 2024, 2 of them are from 2023, and 1 is considered a classic. Slightly more modern day classic, but definitely a classic. We'll get there. So obviously I'm wanting to, like, if I'm buying new releases, I want to read them. I'm hoping my like 2025 numbers are pretty high. I'm hoping my 2024 numbers are pretty high because of things that I bought last year and didn't get to. And then obviously backlist, because it is going over such a huge amount of years, is going to be pretty high there. I have a ton of backlist stuff, but I just wanted to track that for me. And because I have simplified it where I'm only actually tracking like the most recent 3 years, including the one that we're in, and then backlist and classic. I do think this is easier to read, and so I do want to include that every month now, which means we're now going into the star ratings. So, like I said, my star ratings, so like I said, the things that I read this month, I DNF 6 things. On my spreadsheet, I do track that as a 1 star because sometimes I DNF it because it was horrible. Sometimes I DNF it because it's not my thing. Sometimes I DNF it because it's just like sort of mediocre and I'm just like, I don't think it's going to get better. Doesn't necessarily mean that I hate it, but I do like to see it tracked here. Normally it is not this big of a number, but this time it is. So my average rating right now is a 2.85. The one good thing I will say is that I do Storygraph as well for tracking all my stuff. Storygraph separates your DNFs from your actual average rating. They don't let you rate DNFs, and I don't really rate DNFs on Goodreads unless there is a reason for me to dislike it, and that is why I DNF'd it, you know? So my average rating on the Storygraph is like a 3.9 something, so much better. The books that I was getting through had a much higher rating. Like, I would assume that most of my reading would be about there. I'm hoping to get it higher, but right now in my spreadsheet at least, yeah, 2.85. Great. So yeah, those I think are all the stats that we track throughout the months. I am tracking most of the stuff that I normally track throughout the year. Like, I also track some of the author stats, like if I'm reading more from men or women, or I like to track the trans and non-binary authors as well, which ones are person of color, that kind of thing. And then I have a few different pages in my spreadsheet now that I don't ever really show you guys, and I did take most of my spreadsheet from Cawpile, from G from Book Roast. I also have some stuff from Allie from With Allie. So if you guys ever want to look at what I have, I would never give you the link to my spreadsheet because it's basically just me cobbling together stuff from other people. And I have added different things that I track with different charts that I track. But one other thing that I did borrow this year from Allie is where the author is from. Now, I think in her spreadsheet, you could use the country system any way that you wanted. But I thought where the author originated was maybe more accurate than like where the book is set or things like that, because fantasy worlds would be hard to track in here. So out of the books that I read in January, 4 people were from England, 1 was from India, 10 were from the United States, 1 was from South Africa, and 1 was from Ireland. And I just thought that was interesting because I don't normally look at like detailed information on the authors that I read. I definitely go more from like, what is this book about and stuff like that. I will check out stuff about the author, especially like if it's like, oh, I really like this author, I want to know more. Or sometimes you can get hints of things like the author that I read that I think was from South Africa, they mentioned something about that in the book, like the character's parents or something was from there. So like sometimes you get that, but not always. And so when I was actually putting the information in, I didn't realize how many other places there were. And I mean, it's not a ton yet. I'm hoping to really diversify this and see what the map is like at the end of the year. But I did find that interesting. So I did take that for this year as well. And so that's basically all of my stats right now. I am doing a habit tracker to make sure that I'm reading every day. I missed 3 days in January, which is not bad when you really consider it. So ultimately, I did read for 28 days in January, which is like 90% of the month. So yeah, very happy with that. Let's jump into the 17 books I read, starting with all the DNFs. Okay, so the first DNF that I have here is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. Now, this was one of my 25 books to read in 2025. I'm trying to fit at least 2 of those in every single month. I was very excited to get to this. The premise, from what I remembered, because I don't read the synopsis very much, was this was some sort of like almost sci-fi or magical realism type of mystery where our main character is trying to figure out the murder or death of Evelyn Hardcastle and wakes up every day in a new body. This was so boring. Oh my gosh. I listened to this on audio when I was out and about one day doing errands, and I think I listened to almost 2 hours of this on 2x speed, so almost like 4 hours total of this book. And it is very much written in a like trying to be classical 1800s type of style, which I do not enjoy. But also within that time period, like over 20% of this book, nothing really happened. Like we semi got the premise of it almost like 17% of the way through or whatever. Like it was almost a whole hour into it, which means 2 hours into the audiobook. And we sort of got a little bit of a premise, but like nothing really was happening. The person that was supposed to be killed, we don't even know about it until almost that part where I DNF'd. And it was just like, the writing style was 100% not my thing. Like I do not enjoy where things are a little bit too descriptive, too flowery, using language that would have been used back in like Charles Dickens times. Like that's what it felt like. I didn't care about any of the characters. The main character actually has like this sort of amnesia thing. So even though he is switching bodies and trying to figure this stuff out, and I only got through like maybe 2 of those bodies, he doesn't even know who he is. There's some other mysterious person that he's trying to like race against the clock for, but we don't know anything. I'm sure there was going to be some sort of reveals eventually, but I was not really enjoying my time. And then we get to some of the worst fat phobia that I've read in a book in a while. And that was like my stopping point. There's one point earlier than where I did stop where they mention this guy. There's like one guy in the whole book who is overweight, and they mention him in a sort of derogatory fashion, but like it's almost more that like he's dumb versus fat. But it raised my alarms a little bit. And then we eventually get to a part where our main character is in this guy's body, this fat guy's body. And the way it's described is always super negative. He also talks about how he can't even get into the bathtub or out of the bathtub by himself. He's disgusted with the way he looks. His fingers are like sausages and he can barely move them because they're so big. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like, I can't. Like, he was winded even walking like 2 steps. Like, I'm just like, it was so in your face, over the top for that I was like, no matter how much I was probably gonna DNF this anyway, because it was not my thing, not my style, not engaging enough for me to really want to read it. But the absolute like fat phobia in it for that one character, it was like every single descriptor for this man was negative. No. My next DNF was another one from my TBR, Lies and Lullabies by Serena Bowen. So I've read a previous Serena Bowen a few years ago. I gave it a 3 stars. Like, it wasn't amazing, it wasn't bad. I was curious about this one because it's going to be like some sort of rock star romance. Second chance, which is again not my favorite trope. And it's basically like this, I think he's like the guitar player, the songwriter from this band, comes into this like town. There's a cabin by a lake. He brings his whole band with him, but apparently this is a place that he wrote like one of their really best-selling albums like 5 years ago or something like that. And while he's there this time, the girl that sort of got away because he slept with her one time while he was there, reappears. And in the part that I read up to, we then just get a bunch of like backstory and like reminiscing from these characters on what happened previously. And it's a little bit uncomfortable in the fact that like both of these characters mention that like he was very, very nice to her. He really wanted to sleep with her and get her pants, but he was going to be a gentleman and not do that. And then her thinking, oh my gosh, he's the first guy ever that's only ever wanted to see me as a friend. But they eventually do sleep together. And part of the reason that I DNF this is it was just a little bit uncomfortable, but they do bring up trigger warnings, I guess, and stuff too, that the woman in here was previously sexually assaulted and raped back when she was in college. And so she's very like, people can't come up behind her and do stuff without her knowledge. Like, she is like PTSD, all this kind of stuff. And the reason they slept together is because he was so nice and didn't want to like just see her for her body, even though he was seeing her for her body in his head, just not out loud. she wanted to sleep with him to feel comfortable again after the rape. And like she basically comes out and like, I know you don't see me that way. I know I'm like disgusting to you, but I want to sleep with you. And he's like, no, you're not disgusting. I've been wanting to get in your pants for forever, but I didn't think it was good. It was just very uncomfortable. Like, and then we have the sex scene and I'm just like, did we really need that to be the reason that they had gotten together? And then he eventually leaves. Well, part of this book, and it tells you in the synopsis, is she got pregnant at that time, eventually had a kid, and when she comes back into town and he comes back into town, she's with her brother and her like 4-year-old daughter now. And so I'm sure there's going to be some big miscommunication where this guy thinks that her brother is actually her husband or whatever, or the baby daddy, and he's going to be like, oh, I can't be with her. I don't know. I got uncomfortable quite early in this book because of the whole way that their first sexual encounter played out. And now it's like 5 years later and they're both like loving each other again with no downtime in between, no care that like he went away for like 5 years. Yeah, I just didn't like the setup for this one. I just don't think that's my thing. My next DNF is And Another Thing by Eoin Colfer. So this is the 6th book in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series. I read all of these last year as a read-along and we had live shows and I really, really enjoyed doing that, even though these are not my favorite books. The first book I gave like a 4 and I think the last book I gave a 4, but like the ones in the middle were like 2s and 3s. Like they weren't amazing. This one is supposed to be like the next part of the series that you didn't really need. And it is also written by a different author. This one was published, I'm pretty sure, after Douglas Adams has passed, and I don't think it was needed. I did listen to 1 hour and 40 minutes of this, again, on 2x speed, so I got like 100 pages into this, and it's really just, I don't think it was needed. I thought it started off okay. It goes into a little bit more of the like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy language where it's describing all these different planets and the stuff in space and the way things happen and the computer AI intelligences and things like that. And I was like, okay, I could get on board with this, but then it just was like, do we really need this? No. It also brought back Zaphod, and he felt very, very different. I don't know if part of it was just like it was a different audio narrator that I was listening to, or if it was like Eoin Colfer is obviously not Douglas Adams and was trying too hard. I just didn't really care because of the fact that we sort of got through the 5 books and it had an ending to book 5. And like, yeah, it has a reason why book 6 could be there. Like this book did give us a reason, but I just was like, I don't really need this. So I DNF'd. The next book I DNF'd was an ARC. I was so sad about this, but it is The Broposal by Senora Reyes. So this is Senora Reyes' first adult book. They've written YA stuff before. I've been curious about it. I do have a YA contemporary on my shelves that now I'm just like, I don't know about, because 1, I'm not really into YA contemporaries set in high school, and it is, and 2, I was a little bit uncomfortable with this book. I thought the premise sounded amazing. We have these characters who are going to be dealing with being undocumented in the United States after not being able to get your work visa renewed, and then having a romance and discovering your sexuality. Like one guy thinks he's straight, but he's really not, and all this kind of stuff. But we start off with one of the main characters already in a relationship. I do not like that in my romances. We do know based on the summary that they are going to break up. That is sort of the point, but the person that he is with is so horrible and overbearing to an absurd degree that is like, why were you with this person in the first place? Like, what was the point? Now, the thing is, I read a different arc that we will talk about in a little bit because I actually finished it, but it's from the same publisher as this one, The Proposal, and they both have characters in relationships that are not going to be the end game romance relationship. I don't like that. Why did, like, the other one was not in the synopsis, so that was a surprise to me, but I don't like that point. My other thing with this, I don't know if it was because it's this author's first adult book, but they mention a sex bag in this guy's car filled with lube and whips and handcuffs and stuff, and there's a heavy implication, not even implication, they talk about it a few times, that like this is his bag that he carries with him everywhere and he is going to use it later. And I'm just like, it was so early in the book that I was like, did we really need any of that? Like first of all, this guy is in a different relationship with a horrible woman. None of the characters are showing any sort of actual romantic inclination to the actual romance couple that we're supposed to root for. And we're getting all this like sex stuff thrown in our face when I don't want to like think about that with that character and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, just not my thing. I tried this one so much, but it did not work. Like, I just could not make myself read more of it because of those things. And it was one of those books that was going to put me in a slump if I didn't just DNF. So even though it was an ARC and I did not want to DNF, I did. Then I have a couple books that I DNF'd during a vlog that is actually going to come out this weekend, so keep an eye out for that. The first is The Guinevere Deception by Kiersten White. This one is just not really my thing anymore. It is King Arthur, sort of retelling Guinevere, sort of retelling, very much sort of written in a more like historical fiction type of thing. Not really my thing, and I just knew I was not really here for it, so I DNF'd. I also have Stars Hide Your Fires by Jessica Mary Best. This one, I got through almost half of it, I want to say, and it was just one of those things where it wasn't moving well enough for me. Like, I wanted more from it. I probably could have finished this and maybe given it a 3, but is that what I'm here for right now? No. Okay, so those are all the DNFs. Thank God. The next rating that I have, though, is a 2-star. The 2-star that I have is Haru Spring by Joe Latham. So this one is a comic that I think after my like best comics, graphic novels, and manga video of last year, somebody said, oh, you should read this. It was really cute. The art style is really cute. I agree, very much so. My biggest thing with this is it's more of like a fantasy. Our main character is like this little blue bird. We do have a pig there. I don't know why the pig is there because everybody else is basically a bird as well. So it was a lot of stuff that I just did not understand. Haru is supposed to like fulfill a prophecy. There's this like evil witch king or something that is supposed to bring darkness to the land. Lots of stuff is going on. Haru's mom is also a ghost, but they don't explain anything. It was like one of those things where the dialogue felt very juvenile. And because it's a graphic novel comic type of thing, the dialogue is supposed to get you through all the pictures and like everything is supposed to work together, but like the dialogue did not work for me. I did not understand the characters. I did not understand why one of the characters was a pig when everybody else was a bird. I did not understand why there was a ghost. I didn't understand why there was like a witch king thing that did not seem like a bird when everybody else was. Because like this quest they're going on, it's not even like nobody knows what they're doing. I just don't think this was one for me, but I also think it wasn't one for me in a bad way. Like there was so much stuff thrown in there that it wasn't detailed enough for me to understand what was going on. So I did give this a 2 stars. Like I did not like my time with it. I read like 270 something pages in this. The good thing is it was a comic / graphic novel that I got from the library. So it was quicker that way, but like I probably should have DNF'd it. I should. Okay, moving on to my 3 stars. This is where we get to like the meh category. The first one I have here is Beneath an Alien Sky by Sid Kodian. This one I funded on Kickstarter. I'm not mad that I did. It is very much sci-fi. I just think this needed more. Like, I feel like they were going in a very interesting direction. Everybody is very alien. And they even mention back here that like there's this like weird monster alien that eventually comes to this area that these aliens are on, and it comes from the 3rd planet orbiting the yellow sun. I feel like that gives away part of the, not exactly a twist, like you sort of know what's supposed to be going on, but like this creature escapes and starts causing havoc. Our main character is like an untested cop in this area, and they're also like very contained. Like they were ruining their planet that they were on, so an AI type of thing was brought in to contain them in this like big bubble so they can't go outside. Like I feel like there was some sort of message here that could have very much been expanded upon, but because it was sort of short, like this is a big hardcover, and I think because of that it makes it look like it had more pages than it actually does. I just needed more expansion on the characters. Like I didn't really care about them. I didn't really care about the system. There was some talk of like sci-fi time travel type of stuff. Like I feel like this could have been amazing, but I would have needed a little bit more depth to a lot of the stuff that happened, a little bit more page time, a little bit more explanation. but I did have fun with it. Like, it was just like I wished for more, especially by the end, so that's why I have to give it a 3-star. Okay, my next 3-star is a book that I read because I DNF'd Lies and Lullabies. I needed a book for the Buzzword Challenge, so I read One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. This is very much like a mystery, and I think that's part of my problem. I think I don't like purely mystery books as much as thrillers, and that's what this one felt like. It felt like it was taking so long to get to the point because it is sort of like a closed door mystery. 5 kids go into detention one day and then one of them dies and does not come out, and the 4 that are left are very much looked at as the perpetrators for this. The police keep trying to like pin it on them and things like that, and they're trying to figure out what actually happened because they don't believe they did it. They don't believe it's one of the people in the class, so they want to know what else happened. I just don't think the reveal of like the actual whodunit was intriguing enough. Like, I was like, oh, okay, sure. There's also a romance sort of in here that just did not feel natural. I don't know, it felt like it was almost trying to take away from the mystery aspect, but it also did not do that well enough. Like, I just wanted more. I also think the writing style, I think this might be this author's debut. It was not as good as I would have hoped for, especially reading a book that we'll talk about later that is almost in the same genre. I just feel like there could have been more to it. And so again, it was technically a quick read, even though it felt like it was taking forever to like get stuff done for the characters. We also have 4 points of view that I don't think we needed all of them. I don't know. This was just one of those ones that I feel like could have been amazing, and it was just okay. My next 3 stars is one that I originally thought I rated 3.5, and then really looking back on it, it's a 3. It's Playing Flirty by Shamiz Patel. So this is the other book that I was talking about when I was mentioning their proposal. This is by the same publisher. It also has a character who is in a relationship for almost 20% of this book, and it was making me mad. I will also say the start of this book, I did not like the writing style. It eventually got better, so I don't know exactly what it was that I didn't like, or if it was just I got used to it, or if it actually just needed a little bit more editing at the beginning of the book, but then it was okay afterwards. But this is about a character who is trying to like do a board game competition. She goes to game nights with her friends, and one of her friends has like a brother who is like her rival. He likes video games more than board games. One of my other problems with this is that she's trying to make like a very unique board game, but all the board games that they talk about and play are Monopoly and like Clue, like very traditional games that I played when I was a kid. If I'm thinking of adults playing board games now, those aren't the games I'm thinking of. Like, they could have even maybe mentioned Risk more. Like, I think they might have done it like once. So I'm just like, I wished for more for this. I will say, once you get past the fact that this woman is in a different relationship thinking she's going to get engaged soon to, again, another horrible person, but like she thinks she's going to be getting engaged to this person for so long. They did not need to do that. I could have had a slight rivals to lovers where he helps her out with her board game, because that's sort of the whole point of like why they grow closer. They could have done that without having the weird, she's already in a relationship at the beginning of the story. Like, there was stuff that I really wanted to like the main guy character that is eventually in the romance, William. I did actually like him and his backstory and things like that. Like, when I first started this book, I thought it was going to be like maybe a 2. And then I sort of got into it and I was like, okay, maybe a little bit more than that. And then I really did like him and his character and a little bit of their romance later on, like much, much later in the book. So when I finished this book, I originally gave it a 3.5, but for how much I didn't like it near the beginning, I can't. I have to give it a 3. This is one of those ones that had like really good points and really, really bad points, and so that's why it ends up in the middle. Like, I didn't hate it and I didn't love it, but there were things that I hated and things that I loved. But I need to stop reading romances where one of the characters is already in a relationship. And these were both arcs from the same publisher. So somebody there at that publisher loves that trope and I do not. Okay, moving on to my 3.5. I read Chitty Chitty Bang Bang by Ian Fleming. So this is a book that I've owned for forever, mostly just because it's an old book that I don't even know if it has a publication copyright date in here. 1964. I love the movie. And so this is one that I've just owned for forever. It's been on my TBR. I listened to this on audio because I was going out on errands one day and I needed a short audio, and it was narrated by David Tennant, so of course I decided to listen to this. I think it is very much a product of its time. The writing style of this, not the best. I do think listening to it as an audiobook, like people telling it to you, is better. It is also quite different from the movie. This is part of a series technically, but I think it might be from other authors. Oh, there's also illustrations in here. That could have been interesting. They're not the best illustrations, but like that could have been fun. But I liked the audiobook well enough. I do think I like aspects of the movie better. In this story, the kid's mom is still around, and so there isn't like a romance side plot like the movie had. Also, the things that the car does, some of them are very similar to the movie, some are very different. I'm curious if some of those aspects from the movie came from different books in the series or not. I do think for a very classic, I'm considering this a classic, a modern day classic maybe, it's from the 60s, and it had a classic movie. I'm considering this a classic. For a very classic sort of like children's story, I don't even know if you can consider it middle grade, although I did put it on here as middle grade. It's a very okay children's book. I would have wanted more nowadays if something like this was being published, but for something that I listened to for like an hour and a half in the car with David Tennant reading it to me, it was fine. Moving on to my 4-star read, I have Level Up by Kathy Yardley. So this is a book that I picked because I loved Role Playing by Kathy Yardley. It was like my second top book of the year in 2024. That one was published in like 2023 or something like that. This one was published originally like in 2015 or 2016, something like that. So I do think you can really see a difference between Level Up to Role Playing. Still has a lot of like nerdy stuff. They talk about the TARDIS, they talk about like cosplay and a bunch of different things. They have TV shows in this world of this book that are, you can tell that they're sort of based on like supernatural and things like that, but it's like from the world of the book. It's not like a real thing, but I really liked the sort of friendship aspects of the characters and everything like that. I just don't think it was quite as well done as Role Playing, and I think part of it is that it was a shorter book, but also one of her earlier ones. This is part of a companion novel series, so I do want to definitely read more because every single book in it will have like another character that was like a friend of the main character from this one. So I do think it was just a really quick, like I read it in one sitting, literally one sitting, quick, fun, like geeky romance. I will say, because it was originally published in like 2015, 2016, there is a couple Harry Potter references near the beginning of this, but then we definitely have a bunch of other geeky references through the rest of it. So it was just a couple near the beginning, and I will give it a pass because of when it was published, obviously. But I definitely want to continue with more from this series and more from this author. Okay, moving into my 4.5 stars. The first one I have here is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This is the book and the reason that I did not give One of Us is Lying a higher rating. The writing style I think was much better in this book. It is also a little bit more thriller-esque than just pure mystery. I really, really liked this one. When I first finished it, I think I gave it a 4, but I was sort of hesitating between a 4 and a 4.5. But then I also watched the Netflix TV show, which I did not like nearly as much as the book. It gave me more of an insight into the book and like how it actually was really put together well. The way that the reveals happened, even though I guessed most of them, not in a bad way, but just like me thinking, hey, it's probably something like this because they don't want you to see that type of thing. So I ended up really thinking about this book more than I realized. And so while I can't give it a full 5-star, I did give it a 4.5. I will say, spoilers, and I did a vlog on this, so there's a little bit more in detail for things too, but spoilers, the dog in this book does die, just for anybody that needs to know that. But I really did like this. It's all about a girl trying to prove that somebody who potentially murdered his girlfriend, like everybody is assuming that he did it, didn't actually do it. Like she's like, there's too many questions that have been left open from this, because not only is he supposed to have killed his girlfriend, he's then supposed to have committed suicide after that, and she's just like, something doesn't add up. I really did like this one a lot, and I think because it wasn't just purely a mystery, but also had some thriller elements in it, I liked it way more. So yeah, 4.5 stars. My next 4.5 stars was Full Speed to a Crash Landing by Beth Revis. This is another 25 in 2025 book that I picked. I needed to do like 2 a month, and so near the end of January I was like, you know what, I need to do another one. This one is very, very short. It's a novella, and I had heard the author talking about I think her 3rd book in the series is coming out soon, and basically was pitching it as like the bad guy in this series is based on Elon Musk. And I was like, you know what? I need to read that. I will say, after having read this one, that character isn't really in here. You get through this whole novella, and then near the end you get some like little snippets of like emails and things like that that sort of open up what's going to happen in the next book, and you do then get hints of this Elon Musk character through that. But basically this is about a woman who is like a scavenger, and she goes to this planet to scavenge from a wreck that is there, ends up having like a burst hole in the side of her spaceship. Like, we open up with her calling for help from this other spaceship that is coming into the area. They have to pick her up and then sort of decide if they want to work with her or not, because there is something classified that was in this wreck. And it is this whole thing from there. I really liked the characters. I mean, it was a very short novella, very quick. Again, another like one sitting read. But I liked everything that happened in here. I thought the sci-fi aspects were good. It felt very Firefly-esque in the whole sort of like people having to live in space, and some of them are scavengers and having to like get metal from these spaceships to go sell at other places. Like, I really liked that aspect. I'm very curious about the Elon Musk type of villain stuff that's gonna happen in book 2 and book 3. The only reason it's not a 5-star is it does end sort of abruptly, and it almost feels like this could have been probably put with book 2, or maybe book 2 and book 3 to make one bigger book. I don't mind the smaller nature, and I will say that getting this like other stuff in the back, because the whole book is prose until those parts. I really liked those other parts, but like it felt like the prose part ended sort of abruptly, and then we get these little hints of what's gonna happen next. So I did really, really enjoy this. I don't know, I wish the ending was slightly different, but now I definitely need to read book 2. Okay, now we're getting into the 5 stars. 3 more left. I feel like this video is probably gonna be way too long. Okay, getting into my 5-star reads. The first one I have is Cinderella and the Beast, or Beauty and the Glass Slipper by Kim Bussing. So this is a middle grade fantasy that I really, really enjoyed. I read this as an ARC. I'm really thinking I need to get a copy if I can, because it has really cool sprayed edges, and I'm just like a sucker, obviously, for those. But this is like a Cinderella and Beauty and the Beast retelling where things are switched. Now, I will say I saw some reviews on there after I finished and wrote my review. There was a couple people that did not like this because it wasn't Cinderella-y enough or Beauty and the Beast-y enough. And I sort of think that's part of the reason I really did like this. It takes the bare bones of those stories. So like Cinderella having the sort of like evil stepmother, evil stepsisters who are having her do chores and things like that. Beauty and the Beast, where her father steals something from like the Beast's castle. You know, like the basic of the stories. But at one point, Cinderella and Belle switch magically. And so Cinderella ends up in the Beauty and the Beast storyline, and it's not like them trying to get back to the Cinderella storyline, and Belle ends up in the Cinderella storyline, and again, it's not trying to get back to the Beauty and the Beast storyline. It's almost like those characters just switch, and now that's their storyline, and it is very different. We do have like a different sort of job for Belle's father. Like, the world is set up in a way where it seems like a lot of different fairy tale creatures and stuff live. So there's a second book coming out in this series in a couple months, I want to say. I think it's the beginning of March, actually. And I'm very curious about that one, because that one's going to have like Snow White and Rapunzel? Or Sleeping Beauty? Sleeping Beauty, I think. Snow White and Sleeping Beauty. Like, I really want to see what's going to happen, because I'm curious if it's going to be in the same world. Like, we had overlap of like different things in this world for the characters, but I liked that they just took the bare bones of the princess stories and really put their own spin on the characters and everything that happened. Like, I really, really enjoyed this one. It was a really fun middle grade fantasy. The next 5 stars I debated if this was my second favorite or first favorite. I went back and forth, and so because I just talked about a Cinderella retelling, guess what? We're going to talk about another one just because I felt like it fit very well that way. I listened to If the Shoe Fits by Julie Murphy. This is the first book in the Meant to Be series that has a bunch of different romances, adult romances with Disney characters. Again, I really, really liked this one. I liked that, again, it was based on Cinderella. You really get to know like why it's based on Cinderella. Our main character's name is Cindy. She really loves shoes. But I think I really liked the fact that it's not an evil stepmother and evil stepsisters. Like, she is Cinderella, but like only in the bare bones background of it. I really, really liked it. I loved the characters. I loved the romance elements that were in here. I liked the whole, she was plus size, but she's very comfortable in her body and she loves fashion. And that was like the way that they went into some of the like, how the fashion industry has some fat phobia in them, even if it's not like a blatant sort of thing. Like, I really love the commentary in this. Like, I can't complain about a single thing about this book. Like, I really enjoyed every single bit of it. I need to read more in this series. I did find it very interesting, more in the fact that like I wasn't sure what to expect. This is published by Disney. It is like based on Disney characters. So because of that, even though it is an adult romance, it is very closed door, fade to black, which, I mean, looking at it afterwards, you're like, obviously it's based on Disney. It's based on Disney princesses, like that kind of stuff. But now I need to read all of them. I really, really do. I love that one so, so much. But now that leads us into my favorite book, although that one is a very good tie for it because I really did love both of these. Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I finally did it and read it. 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely love our main character, Violet. I love the fact that she does have a disability. It should be EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is like the same thing that our author has. It's not stated in the book as an actual, like, here's what it is, probably because it's a fantasy world, but I liked the fact that, like, she is not your typical gonna save the world person. She doesn't really want to be in this situation, doesn't want to be a dragon rider and going into this school to, like, go fight things because she is used to being a scholar and doing that kind of stuff. Like, I really liked that. Yes, because she has this disability, she's less at an advantage, but in this world, especially with some of the dragons, they have accommodations and things like that. Like, I really liked what happened in this. It is very much like a school, college, university setting at first as well. I will say that I don't 100% get the Xaden thing right now, and I think it's because up until a certain point, later in the book is better, but up until a certain point, he's basically just this like tall, dark, and handsome character who, oh, he doesn't like me, he's supposed to kill me, and then she like falls in love with him. Like, I just felt like there wasn't enough depth with him at first. Later on, I do think it was better, so I'm hoping book 2 has some more of that, but like, besides that one thing, like, I really love this. I cried at parts of this. I'm sure people, if you've read this, you probably know, like, I literally teared up and cried. And when things get into my emotions like that, even if I'm a little bit, like, I don't 100% get at first, it doesn't fucking matter anymore after that. You know what I mean? Like, this book got me in my feels. I really, really enjoyed it. And I need to read more in the series. I was planning on reading Iron Flame actually in January as well, and then had a ton of other books, obviously, as you can see, that I also like had to read and was trying to read. I really love this one. It took me a while. I do think the hype is worth it, 100%. So yeah. And then, like I said, that is going to be it. Tons of books read in January. Like, I feel like my numbers were amazing. The fact that I DNF'd so many of them was disappointing, but at the same time, like, I'm holding on to the hope that this just means that, like, I am going to be making time for books that are actually good and things that I want to read and that I'm enjoying versus, like, trying to get through things that I'm just, like, not. We'll see as this goes, because sometimes I'm really, really bad about actually DNFing stuff, but I think I did okay in January. I was sad about how many DNFs I actually had, so I guess we'll just sort of see how we do in February. But otherwise, that is going to be it for me today. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more videos. I do have videos coming out Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, so I will see you then. Bye!